Welcome back to WagerTalk.com. I'm Marco D'Angelo, joined in studio this week with Matthew Holt, VP of Business Development for CG Technology. Matt, you know me well. In this week, Kentucky Derby week, I'm like a kid Christmas week. It's like Christmas Eve. I'm waiting for the Derby on Saturday. And we're going to get into this video. We're going to actually have 3 different videos on the Kentucky Derby, and we're going to break them down to the contenders, the long shots, and then what everybody wants, our best bets for the Derby. But you, as a bookmaker, the Kentucky Derby, we know horse racing, it's an old man's sport is what it's supposed to be. But the Kentucky Derby, that's the one time it's not. Everybody bets the Derby. What have you seen in your years here in the sports book in Vegas?
And look, I'm with you. I grew up with horse racing. I even worked at Suffolk Downs when I was 18 years old, so I have a long history of horse racing as well. And I was born on a Kentucky Derby day, my birthday being May 7th.
Nice.
So Seattle Slew, 1977, that was my birth year. So, yeah, I mean, I grew up with it too. And what we've seen is the downturn of horse racing, of course, with so many alternate gaming mechanisms. You know, 38 states have casino gaming and all the lottery gaming. But the one weekend of the year that is bulletproof to demise has been the Kentucky Derby. We do not see a downturn in handle on the Derby or participation. In fact, it just gets bigger, which is why you see so many casinos and places doing promotions for the Kentucky Derby, because horse racing is still one of the best platforms for the casinos and operators like us, where you're guaranteed a hold. Unlike the Super Bowl, where, hey, look, we might do $25 million personally, and the state might do $150 million on the Super Bowl, but we could all lose. Whereas on Kentucky Derby, if we do $50 million a handle, we're probably going to win about $8 to $12 million.
If the guys in accounting could have their way, they'd love you to just do horse racing all the time.
They wish it was Kentucky Derby every weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And now to build on that one step further, when you talk about betting sports, you're betting the better is going against the house. Now, granted, as everybody bets and moves the line around, but at the end of the day, it's still you against the book. Where in horse racing, it's not. It's you, the better, against everybody else that's betting, and you're trying to get your share of that betting pool. And for me, as somebody that, you know, not only bets horses, I own horses, I know the game, I feel I've got a tremendous edge in a Kentucky Derby because there's so much dead money. I mean, there's going to be people that are going to bet this race on Saturday. That's the only race they're going to bet all year, and I don't want to be rude, but they really don't know what they're doing. So as we use the poker term, there's going to be a lot of dead money out there for somebody that understands the game to pick up.
And not just that race, but that whole day. That Churchill Downs card that day is one of the best cards for a professional horse betting handicapper to make the most money, because people start going to these horse racing parties, and all the races are televised somewhere now, and hey, you get going. You're going to bet the races while you're waiting for the Derby, and I tend to find that there's a lot of value throughout the entire card that day. But the Derby, you're right, there's a lot of dead money. People just betting names and numbers and colors and whatever odd reasoning you could find.
That one's pretty, looking on the track. And then the exactas and the trifectas and the superfectas is where the real value is. And to give you an example, last year, the 4 favorites ran 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, on a given day at a regular racetrack for a superfecta, that's going to bring back maybe $125, best. That brought back $500 because the pool is so inflated with the stone cold favorites running 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why there's value. That's why I bet more money on the Derby than I bet on any other race. Enough about setting it up. Let's talk about some of the contenders. Let's start with the horse that's supposed to be the favorite, the morning line favorite, Classic Empire. This is a horse that he's had his share of problems, but when he's does everything right, he's hard to beat.
I know that the top 5 horses are really tightening here in terms of odds, but I feel like Classic Empire is a deserved favorite here. 7 races, 5 wins, many of them very, very impressive. And in his 2 losses, one of them he threw his rider. So basically you could throw that out because he literally threw his rider. So we could throw that race out. And then when you look at the Holy Bull, which is the only race where he actually finished the race with a rider on him that he did not win, you know, look, maybe there was a setup race, maybe he just came out flat. But in his other 5 races, he is really dominant. And when you watch the Arkansas Derby, which he won, there is a cloud of horses there jumbled up at the front, and he's in the back of that cloud, and it would have been real easy for him to run into trouble, have to stop and go and shift. And the way that he won that race, despite being in that much traffic, very impressive. This horse is the deserved favorite in the Kentucky Derby.
What you have to worry about with Classic Empire is he going to behave himself? Because you're going to have, you know, 140,000 people at Churchill Downs. They're never going to experience anything as loud as what they're going to hear those couple minutes before the race, and if he does anything stupid. You've got to give trainer Mark Casse credit. He battled a foot abscess with this horse that cost him training time. Then the horse ended up having a back problem, probably because he was shifting his weight because of the foot bothering him. He missed some time with that. So for him to get him ready and to do what he did in the Arkansas Derby, yes, this is a horse that you have to consider and deserves the favorites role. Another horse to look at is Always Dreaming. Morning line 5-1. This is a horse that's moving in the right direction. I like the horse. I think he's got a big shot. What are your thoughts on Always Dreaming?
Look, first of all, if you're a horse person, you have to start with the connections here. Todd Pletcher, J.R. Velasquez. I mean, that is a combination that's had a lot of success from a lot of years. So the connections are really good right out of the gate. And to your point, this is a horse that's won 3 straight races, including the Florida Derby, one of the major Derby prep races, and he looked really good winning the Florida Derby. I went back. I've watched that race several times. Is my favorite horse in the Kentucky Derby. Gunnevera finished 3rd in that race. I think he got a perfect trip in that race, but give him credit. It was a race loaded with Derby contenders, and he ended up winning, and he won that race easy. So look, he's looked impressive, and he's looked impressive in his last 3. He was a horse that came out a little slow, took a couple races to break his maiden. He's only raced 5 times ever, but won over 650,000. And now, you know, 3 in a row with these connections. Todd Pletcher, JR, a good post in the Derby. Hard to ignore this one.
And to add on that, the 5 starts. This is a horse with only 5 starts, has the license to make that next big jump, where I don't like horses that have 10 starts already, because there are what they are. They're not going to take that big jump. The other point I like with Always Dreaming to point out, that Florida Derby, career best buyer, the final furlong in that race, he went 12.53. He was flying, indicating that he wanted to go more. So the distance, I don't think is going to be a problem for Always Dreaming. I think he's definitely a horse you've got to put on the ticket, and he's a serious horse. Another horse, McCracken. This is a horse that, you know, has been consistent. He had a bad race his last race, but I think that race was more of a race to tighten him up because he was coming off a layoff than it was anything else. He was going to have enough points to get into the Derby. Why overstretch the horse if he wasn't 100% tight? This is a horse that you got to look at, and he is getting a lot of buzz.
Yeah, and one of those cliche terms in horse racing that you and I and everyone uses all the time, and for the folks that are going to be watching or actually down there in person at the betting seminar tomorrow, we'll hear probably used several times, is horse for course. Yeah. And this is the horse for course here, 3 for 3 on this Churchill Downs surface, undefeated. And to your point, he came in 4 for 4 into that Bluegrass Stakes race, another one of the major prep races. And you're right, a lot of people use that as, you know, I have to get this Bluegrass points to even get into the Derby. To your point, he had his Derby entry sealed up a long time ago. And here's something I thought that was really interesting. So you have 2 options here for Brian Hernandez, the jockey of McCracken, to ride. He could have rode McCracken, or he could have rode Gervin, and Gervin has run tremendously on that circuit. There was no question he was riding McCracken. That says something about it a little bit as well.
Absolutely, and the thing about why that race was a prep race, I feel, for McCracken, is his original plan was to go to the Tampa Bay Derby. But the horse ended up having some problems. He came out of the Sam Davis race, a race that he won. He came out with a sore ankle. He had an ankle sprain, and rather than risk further injury, they backed off the training, did the right thing, skipped the Tampa Bay Derby to go to the later race, which was the Bluegrass. And to me, they didn't overextend him, just get him tightened up for the next race. They used that as exactly what it's called, a Kentucky Derby prep race. And I think you're going to see I think he's sitting on a monster race on Saturday. And the last one that we will talk about that's getting some attention in 6-1 on the morning line, Irish War Cry. this is one of the best looking horses in a race from a physical standpoint. Every time I see this horse, I just, me being a horse owner, I take back, I go, whoa, I'd love to have a horse that looks like this. What do you think of Irish War Cry?
I actually was speaking with a few people when the field was originally announced, and I said, man, is Irish War Cry the best horse in this race? Because when you look at him in person, he's just a monster, and he looks like what you think a race horse should look like. Look, he's run 102 speed buyers in his last race. He's the only horse in this race to actually beat Classic Empire in a race, we're actually finished with a jockey. He's done a lot of things right here. The one question I have is what happens to Irish War Cry when he doesn't comfortably get to the front with at least a reasonable pace? And we saw it in that one time in the Arkansas Derby when he was in there Classic Empire as well, and it didn't go well for him. And I wonder from the 17 post here, and there's not a ton of pace, so maybe he gets there clean. If he doesn't again, are we going to see those same issues pop up again where I can't get to the front, I have to push too hard to try to get there, and now at the end of the race, that gas tank's empty?
That's the key on this one, is how hard he has to work to that first turn. This is where I wish we had in-race betting, because
sure.
We could hammer it if we knew how we saw that first turn.
If they come around and he does 4:48, he's probably pretty good. If it's 4:46, good night, Irish War Cry.
All right, that covers all of the early horses, the contenders here for this first video. We'll be back with another video. We're going to take a look at long shots. Everybody likes long shots, and don't forget, guys, head over to WagerTalk.com. Every Friday, it's Flashback Friday. You can pick up a best bet each and every Friday for just $7. Check it out. We'll be back with more here at WagerTalk.com.